Discover the 7 most shocking and transformative tales of Roman slaves' incredible resilience. Jack Thompson felt the weight of silence in the dimly lit archives of the university library. Dust motes swirled in the beams of sunlight slicing through the grime-smeared windows. As a history professor committed to breathing life into the artifacts of the past, he could never resist the call of discovery. Today, the gamified politics of campus had him feeling more like an intruder in a world that, at times, refused to acknowledge his mission. Perhaps that's why he was drawn into the labyrinth of shelving, rummaging through weathered tomes and forgotten texts that whispered stories of hardship. There, in a neglected corner labeled Ancient Civilizations, an intriguing collection of Roman slave narratives beckoned him. The first few tales he read unfurled the indomitable spirit of slaves who had faced unimaginable cruelty yet emerged with heart and hope. Jack's fingers trembled with excitement. Could he connect these ancient trials with the glaring injustices faced by modern society? Would this radical idea put him at odds with the conservative faculty? His mind raced a tumultuous blend of anticipation and dread. Clarity settled over him for a brief moment. He could challenge his students with these narratives. He could encourage critical thinking, spark protests against the status quo. But at what cost? His thoughts spiraled as he recalled Emma, a keen student plagued by the burden of her family's expectations. He had watched her brilliance dim under the shadows of those suffocating dreams. Would bringing these stories to light break her chains in a way her own family could not? But then the doubt crept in: what if he alienated the very students he sought to liberate? What if his unorthodox curriculum led to his dismissal? Anxiety coiled around his throat, a reminder that the battles of the past don't always guarantee victories in the present. Fingers shaking, he documented the connections between ancient and contemporary oppression, but each parallel felt increasingly precarious, balancing on the edge of what could be deemed reckless. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. His hands trembled as he prepared to present in front of his department, a tightly knit group that found solace in tradition. Would he be accepted? Or would they tear him apart, suffocating his burgeoning ideas in their well-trodden shadows? A wave of nausea swept over him. Could he withstand their pressure? As the meeting loomed, Jack recalled the stories of resilience he'd poured overripe with courage and sacrifice. They carried him through sleepless nights of self-doubt, fueling a fire in the pit of his stomach. Yet, that flame felt precarious against the fears of rejection, of facing down colleagues eager to uphold a fragile status quo. Would he stand up? Or collapse under the immense weight of expectations and ridicule? Steeling himself before the impending confrontation, he realized this was less about defending a course and more about confronting his own demons. Something had to shift. The breath hitched in his chest, the truth clawing at his throat. Would humanity's past ignite a purpose in him, or would he remain bound by the very chains he sought to dismantle? Jack stood at the precipice of a tumultuous decision, caught between the burning desire to evoke change and the gnawing fears that threatened to undo his entire existence. The stakes had never felt higher, and all he could do now was confront the crowd before him, quaking with the weight of the truth he yearned to unveil. Jack stood in front of the conference room, heart pounding like a war drum. The atmosphere felt electrified with anticipation and skepticism, an odd mix of nerves and adrenaline propelling him forward. Before him sat a council of colleagues, each with weary expressions that mirrored the skepticism he felt stringing his thoughts together. This was more than an ordinary departmental meeting, it was the gauntlet where his vision would be laid bare. He had agonized over the presentation for days, crafting arguments and constructing bridges between ancient and modern struggles. But now, as he faced the steely gazes of academic peers, all those arguments evaporated into a haze of self-doubt. What if they rejected his ideas before he could articulate their significance? What if he spoke, and they saw him as nothing but a fool trying to ignite a change in a room indifferent to evolution? Jack cleared his throat, his voice barely breaking the oppressive silence. "Thank you for gathering here today." He felt his pulse quickening, aware of the weight of every word. "I stand before you to propose a new curriculum that challenges our perceptions of history, particularly the narratives of Roman slaves." The words tumbled out, fighting against the knot in his throat. A few heads turned in curiosity, but he could also see the eyebrows rising, faces shifting into guarded masks. Doubt twisted in his stomach, but he pushed ahead. "Their resilience against cruelty offers profound lessons for us today, especially as we grapple with issues of systemic oppression in our own society." He glanced at Emma's empty seat in the back, worrying if she would have believed in him. With every ambitious connection drawn, he measured the room's reactions. Some nods flickered, but the questioning frowns told him he was dancing on the edge of acceptance and dismissal. Suddenly, an older professor, Dr. Levy, leaned in, eyes sharp behind round glasses. "Jack, are you suggesting that the experiences of ancient slaves are comparable to those faced by our students today? Isn't that a little inflammatory?" The question hung in the air like a thundercloud, heavy and foreboding. Jack bit his lip, wrestling with the response that clawed at his words. This was at the moment when self-doubt clashed with the sparkling essence of conviction he hoped to share. "I believe that understanding the past can illuminate our present struggles. Those tales of resilience are necessary and relevant. They can encourage our students to think critically about their own lives." Levy's eyes narrowed, a challenge awaiting his next move. "But what evidence supports your claim that we should embellish ancient narratives in this context? Where is the scholarly integrity in that?" The discomfort rippled through the room, a palpable reminder of his precarious position. Jack's heart raced, and in that moment, he felt stripped bare, exposed to every critique and doubter in the room. But a deeper understanding stirred within him, born from the pages he had immersed himself in. "Stories have power, Dr. Levy. Narratives motivate change. They encourage empathy, and when we connect past injustices to current issues, we empower students to challenge their circumstances." He began to lean into his argument, daring to believe in the power of his revelation. Suddenly, a flicker of understanding crossed a younger colleague's face. "Jack, have you discussed this with any students? Their perspectives could actually," he interjected, feeling momentum build. "Emma, a brilliant student of mine, once struggled under the weight of her family's expectations. When I shared these narratives with her, it shifted her perception of what her future might hold. She began to see the parallels and found her voice." The room shifted, a collective intake of breath, and he felt the contours of doubt begin to reshape. But the fire that ignited in Jack's heart wasn't just about winning over these skeptical minds. He was reclaiming his voice, one that had been stifled not just by his colleagues, but by his own fear. A reckoning awaited. And failure could no longer be an option. With newfound determination, he flashed a calculated smile, sensing the possibility of connection. What was once hidden within dusty tomes can fuel a transformation in our classrooms. Together, we can inspire our students to confront their chains, visible or not. The confrontation grew tense, and he prepared himself for the inevitable wave of critical questions that would test his resolve. But he steeled himself, aware that the battle for progress often reeked of turbulence. Would he back down, or would he face this moment with courage? The next voice came, demanding and assertive. "But can your syllabus truly align our educational standards without compromising academic rigor?" Jack inhaled deeply, ready to engage, knowing the stakes had just escalated dramatically. He was on the brink of something potentially transformative, not just for his career, but for his journey towards embracing his own passion for change. The horizon was murky, but he was resolute. The time had come to face the storm ahead, even if it meant standing alone. Jack felt the tension in the air shift as the assertive question reverberated through the conference room. He straightened up, his instincts honing in on the challenge laid before him. This wasn't merely about defending his syllabus, it was a confrontation with the very essence of his professional identity. Yes, Jack began, infusing his voice with a quiet fervor. The core of my curriculum is designed not only to align with our educational standards but to extend beyond mere facts to inspire critical thought. I believe scholarship must evolve alongside our understanding of modern issues. Isn't our role as educators to encourage evolution in thought just as we explore past narratives. He watched as Dr. Levy's expression shifted, curiosity warring against skepticism, a flicker of recognition dancing within his eyes. Jack seized the opportunity to embrace the uncertainty swirling around him, pulling from the same passion that had first led him to these ancient stories. As he articulated his vision, he felt a strange type of empowerment build within him, igniting a nascent belief in his capability as a leader. Imagine a classroom where students draw parallels between their lives and history. What if we could cultivate not only informed citizens but empathetic ones who can interpret their own challenges through the lens of resilience? A murmur of conversation spread through the room, cautious yet attentive. Jack could feel his heart rate quickening not from fear, but exhilaration. This was his moment. A hand rose from the far corner, a professor known for staunch traditionalism. But their essay risk, Jack. Treading on sensitive ground can alienate scholars and students alike. Are you prepared for that fallout? The apprehension behind the question felt personal. It struck chords of Jack's own insecurities. Could he withstand the backlash? The specter of isolation loomed large once more. But as he glanced toward the vacant seat where he had often seen Emma, he found renewed resolve. He remembered her initial struggles, the very essence of her transformation a testament to the power of narrative. Absolutely, he replied, infusing his response with conviction. Awareness doesn't come without discomfort. But it's in those difficult conversations where real progress lies. If we shy away from discussing uncomfortable truths, we are doing our students a tremendous disservice. Silence filled the space for a heartbeat before laughter erupted from some in the audience, an unexpected development that both relieved and astonished him. Jack had invited reluctance to become an engaging dialogue, and in that very instant, he felt connected to them. It was exhilarating yet frightening. The tension reached a boiling point as Dr. Levy, no longer merely a critic but now deeply engaged, leaned back in his chair, contemplating Jack's words. Then perhaps, he conceded slowly, you've ignited a potential pathway toward dialogue that we all so desperately need. Jack's heart soared at this acknowledgement. It was not a win, but perhaps a stepping stone, a small victory in the face of opposition that forced him to reckon with his own relentless doubts. The meeting continued, discussions blossoming into collaborative possibilities that Jack had only dared to imagine before. He felt buoyed by the momentum, willing to slice through the complexities of academic rigor with the determination to interrogate past injustices head-on. This was his career rising to the challenge, a manifestation of everything he believed in. As the meeting drew to a close, he left the room inspired and invigorated, yet aware that the real test loomed on the horizon. Transforming his ideals into actionable lesson plans required resilience of a different kind. He knew that some colleagues would not easily relinquish their traditional stances, and backlash could very well come in waves. Outside the conference room, the air was thick with post-meeting chatter, yet Jack's thoughts swirled around Emma's name and the glimmering potential of their shared experiences. What could he do to reach out to her and other students? How could he further empower them with impactful narratives? Doubt crept back in as he mulled over the intricacies of his ambitious plans. But determination anchored him in place. Writing Emma a message could mark another step in crackling through barriers of academic expectations and initiating conversations that they both understood were crucial. The stakes for him were no longer just about standing alone in the storm. It was time for him to embrace the transformational possibilities. He needed to confront personal fears head-on and build alliances with those willing to share in this renewed vision. His narrative was unfolding, but the first response to his outreach could either uplift him or lead to devastating confrontation. With his fingers hovering over the keyboard, Jack paused, the weight of this next decision palpable. Would he dare to reach out, or would he risk retreating into the shadows? The moment of decision was at hand, and he felt the enormity of what lay ahead. Jack exhaled slowly, the pressure of the moment twisting in his chest. He could almost hear the ticking of a clock, each second amplifying his uncertainty. The classroom had become a potential stage for something grander than lectures or syllabus debates. It could evolve into a space for transformation both for students and himself. He cleared his throat and decided to message Emma. His fingers hesitated as they hovered above the keyboard, wrestling with the weight of unspoken words. What if she didn't respond? What if she found his new vision impractical or, worse yet, foolish? "Hey Emma," he typed, deleting and rewriting the first line countless times. Each attempt danced precariously between casual and formal. Finally, he settled on simplicity. "I was thinking about what we discussed last semester, how narratives can connect with our present lives." He detailed his vision for integrating critical discussions into their lessons, urging her to share her thoughts. Hit send. There was a rush of adrenaline followed by a hollow silence, an unsettling vacuum where anticipation thrummed just under the surface of his skin. Jack turned his attention toward revising his lesson plans. The academic framework was familiar territory, and yet he felt as if he was wandering into a vast, uncharted landscape. How could he weave complex historical narratives about resilience into modern contexts effectively? It was daunting. He sketched out ideas on paper, writing down potential thematic discussions about power dynamics, the struggle for identity, and the lessons learned through adversity. His enthusiasm flooded him, pushing aside the specter of doubt. He envisioned students connecting with characters who faced unimaginable challenges, drawing lessons from their struggles to apply to their own lives. As he crafted the outline, he dared to imagine their conversations bubbling with energy, challenged by thought-provoking questions that would spur them to probe deeper into their historical texts. But as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows in his office, the doubts returned. Would he push too far? What if he stumbled upon a topic that incited discord instead of dialogue? He couldn't shake the feeling that he was teaching on a precipice. Jack flicked through his phone, mindlessly scrolling, searching for distractions. Suddenly, a message notification blinked. Emma. He felt a jolt of electricity race up his spine, anticipation tingling in his fingertips. He clicked on it. "Hi, Jack. Thanks for reaching out. I'm really interested in what you're trying to do with the curriculum. I'd love to chat more about it." The relief washed over him, but alongside it was a wave of motivation. Here was his ally, someone who understood the importance of the new direction he envisioned. This was the spark he needed to light the way forward. With renewed vigor, Jack put aside his anxieties. He began drafting a meeting outline for a discussion with Emma, detailing potential topics they could explore together. He considered inviting her to present alongside him during one of the sessions, letting her voice, shaped by her own experiences, resonate with their peers. It felt risky, exposing himself by sharing responsibility, but he couldn't ignore the budding sense of possibility that accompanied this venture. As the night deepened around him, Jack wrestled with his internal conflict, to lead with transparency or maintain the upper hand. Would relinquishing control ultimately empower both Emma and himself, or might it leave him vulnerable to the kind of scrutiny he feared most? A knock on his office door startled him, pulling him away from his reverie. It was Dr. Levy, who had apparently caught wind of Jack's re-energized approach and wanted to discuss potential collaborations in the coming weeks. "Jack, we need to talk about your ideas," he stated, an earnestness in his voice. "There are some concerns, but also excitement among several colleagues. You might be onto something that could push boundaries." Jack's heart raced again, but this time with trepidation and hope mingled into a heady blend. The confrontation he had anticipated and avoided was finally here, and the stakes were escalating. Would he advocate firmly for his vision or allow himself to be swayed by potential opposition? The moment may have arrived to face the challenges head-on. Jack steeled himself, feeling a sudden surge of clarity and resolve. Some boundaries needed to be broken, after all, in the name of progress. "Let's talk," he said, a determination echoing in his voice. His narrative was advancing at a dizzying pace, but it was no longer just about him. This was becoming an exploration of collective resilience, and the next chapter would demand everything he had. Jack leaned against the edge of his desk, the gravity of Dr. Levy's words hanging palpably in the air between them. This was no mere academic discussion, it was a pivotal moment. With each beat of his heart, he felt propelled toward his own emergence, both as an educator and an advocate for a less scripted narrative. Concerns? He questioned, the word escaping his lips with a tremor that betrayed both curiosity and apprehension. Dr. Levy nodded, his expression serious yet encouraging. Some of the faculty worry that you're venturing into territory that might provoke discomfort. You know how sensitive discussions around identity and power can be. Jack swallowed hard, the taste of anxiety coming sharply into focus. It was an all too familiar fear, the notion that he could lose the very trust he sought to cultivate. I think that's exactly why these conversations matter, he replied, striving to keep his tone steady. If we don't address them, how can we expect our students to grapple with similar issues in their own lives? The older man regarded him thoughtfully, and for a moment, Jack felt as if he stood on solid ground. There was a flicker of recognition in Dr. Levy's gaze that urged him onward. You're right. But you will need to approach this very carefully. The potential for backlash is real. Backlash. That single word echoed in Jack's mind, laced with both validation and a shivering chill of doubt. But it also ignited something deeper inside him, an urge to confront, to challenge, and, ultimately, to evolve. Each moment he spent deliberating felt like wasted potential. He needed to act, not just react. I want to frame our discussions around personal narratives, he proposed, a surge of determination fueling his delivery. We'll look into the stories of historical figures whose identities were shaped by their struggles. I believe connecting the past to the present can create a bridge that allows us to tackle these sensitive topics with empathy. Dr. Levy's brows furrowed slightly as he processed Jack's words. That could resonate, Jack, but you will have to be prepared for different viewpoints, for pushback. Others may see vulnerability as weakness. But vulnerability can be a strength. If we can take that leap together, students and faculty alike, perhaps we can foster a more genuine dialogue, Jack countered, emboldened by his own conviction. The older man took a moment, tension ebbing from his posture. You'll need allies, he advised. Perhaps involve Emma more directly, or even bring in a guest lecturer specializing in these areas. A wider lens might help mitigate the discomfort. Jack nodded, heat rising in his chest at the suggestion. A collaboration, a community even, across the curriculum could transform their approach. But the idea didn't come without its own shadows. Could he truly embrace such collaboration without sacrificing his vision? As Dr. Levy departed, Jack returned to his desk, the adrenaline of confrontation still coursing through him. He could almost feel the pulsating potential of his ideas materializing in front of him, but doubt crept in ominously. What if his vision wasn't as innovative as he hoped? What if pushing for change resulted in isolation, rather than the meaningful dialogue he sought? Through the night, he immersed himself in research, seeking out narratives of resilience. Each story he uncovered reinforced the power of perspective figures who faced brutality yet emerged with wisdom. This wasn't merely about their historical contexts, it was about safeguarding the discussions that could arise in their modern classroom. As dawn broke, casting a gentle light over his chaotic notes and textbooks, Jack felt a renewed sense of direction. He knew he had been correct to push for change, and now, it was imperative to light that spark in the minds of his colleagues. They needed to share the weight of this vision, and with Emma on board, he could amplify their united front. But would the faculty support him? The atmosphere of conflict loomed heavy, and he couldn't shake the sensation of standing on a tightrope stretched over an abyss. Time to find out, he murmured to himself, determination setting his jaw as he grabbed his phone. A message to Emma was needed, inviting her to join their broader vision and rally support among their peers. With each tick of the clock, he felt emboldened yet anxious as he prepared for what he hoped would be a turning point, ready to face the questioning and criticism that lay ahead. For Jack, The journey toward professional enlightenment was intertwining with the risk of emotional exposure. His development demanded he flourish where darkness threatened, and perhaps it was time to confront the one person he had not yet fully acknowledged, the self-doubt lurking quietly inside. "Let us see where this takes us," he breathed deeply, ready for the unfolding chapter of his professional saga. What awaited him in that meeting with Emma could alter everything, their narratives converging, or colliding, and he was primed for any outcome. Jack stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his collar in an attempt to project an image of confidence. The anticipation of his meeting with Emma surged through him like electricity, a concoction of fear and excitement that left his stomach churning. Each moment of recognition in Dr. Levier's office, every fragment of insight he uncovered in the wee hours of the morning, spun together to craft the impetus he needed. But beneath that surface was a daunting truth: the very narratives he sought to share were deeply entwined with vulnerability, and that vulnerability would take center stage in today's discussions. He found Emma seated at the coffee shop across the street, engrossed in a notebook filled with her thoughts and ideas. As he approached her table, he couldn't help but notice the effortless ease with which she filled the pages. Jack felt a pang of envy. Her ability to articulate her thoughts, a skill he was still wrestling to harness, was evident. But today wasn't about comparison, it was about collaboration. "Hey, Emma," he greeted, a lopsided smile on his face. She looked up, her eyes lighting up at his presence. "Jack. Good to see you. I was just brainstorming some ideas around those personal narratives you mentioned. It's a risky move, but I believe it could lead to something powerful." "Exactly what I'm hoping for," he replied, taking a seat across from her. "The stories we tell could shape how our colleagues and students engage with these themes. Have you considered how you want to present it?" Emma asked, her pen poised, ready to record. "That's where my head is spinning," Jack admitted. "I want to strike a balance, be honest about the messy parts of the journey without discouraging others from sharing theirs. It's fragile territory." Emma leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "That's important. But remember, not everyone might be ready to share or even listen. We might have to prepare ourselves for differing levels of engagement." The sting of recognition washed over Jack. He had anticipated this discord, yet now it felt uncomfortably real. What if we created an environment that fosters that readiness? Perhaps starting with personal stories of resilience to unveil those complexities could ease the tension. Emma nodded, the wheels turning visibly in her mind. "Brilliant. We could actually map out themes that resonate with historical narratives and personal experiences, things students can relate to. It wouldn't just be academic, it would be human." Encouraged by her enthusiasm, Jack sensed a breakthrough flicker between them, an unspoken agreement to push forward, to challenge norms. But there remained a whisper of self-doubt curling in the back of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that embracing this strategy would expose both him and Emma to criticism. What if their authenticity was mistaken for weakness? As if sensing his inner turmoil, Emma leaned back slightly, her expression softening. "Jack, remember, sharing our vulnerabilities could empower others. They may surprise us." Taking a deep breath, Jack steadied himself. "Right. It's about visibility, not validation. But what if, in our attempt to encourage openness, we inadvertently shut others down? Do we risk polarizing the conversation?" Emma leaned forward again, a resolute spark igniting in her eyes. "We must lead by example. If we demonstrate authenticity, then we create a platform where even those resistant to engage can step in gradually. It may not be an overnight change, but we can plant those seeds." Planting seeds, Jack mused, his thoughts racing. "We could frame it as a journey, show how resilience is cultivated over time. It's not just about revealing struggles but showing growth." They began to outline a framework, digging into personal anecdotes they intended to weave into the course. Yet amid their creative momentum, Jack felt a nagging discomfort, an uninvited specter of doubt. Would this approach resonate? Would it prompt growth in his colleagues or merely incite resistance? As they worked through the concepts, Jack realized they were not merely building a Curriculum, they were constructing avenues for risk-taking within the very fabric of learning. He was both terrified and exhilarated by the potential impact. The meeting drew to a close. After exchanging ideas and high-fives, Emma's parting words ignited a spark within him. Let us prepare for their reactions. Remember that will show us who truly stands behind the curriculum we want to create. That night, Jack sat at his desk, patterns of earlier self-doubt resurfacing. He revised their outline, adding annotations and potential opposing viewpoints to each. His instincts told him this process wouldn't just demand professional courage, it would require an emotional leap into the unknown. As he scrolled through previous course evaluations, a bitter taste of past criticism lingered. But tonight, he resolved to confront it all head-on. The dawning realization reverberated through him. Here goes nothing, he murmured, as he hit send on an email to Dr. Levy, inviting him to join their upcoming discussion and to extend the groundwork they had started. But just as victory flickered like a beacon, doubt clawed at him again. The approval he craved loomed like a daunting shadow over his efforts, leaving him to wonder if he would falter at the precipice of hope. In that moment, he felt a familiar tug, a primal instinct to either retreat to safety or leap into the uncertain expanse ahead. Which path would he choose? The lines of his journey were becoming blurrier with each step. Is this the moment I confront my fears, or will I retreat? He whispered, staring into the envelope of uncertainty. The stage was set for transformation, but would he be brave enough to seize it? The next morning, sunlight poured through Jack's window, warming the edges of his discontent. For the first time in weeks, he awoke without that familiar knot of dread tightening in his chest. Instead, there was a quiet hum of intent stirring within. He had committed to stepping into a new phase of his professional journey, one that would not only demand courage but also require him to dismantle the walls his self-doubt had so painstakingly constructed. He slipped into casual attire, choosing comfort over the facade of professionalism he'd often leaned on in the past. Before heading out, he took a moment for reflection. The email to Dr. Levy had opened a door, and now he had to prepare for what lay beyond. Anxiety gripped his thoughts, urging him to reconsider, but he silenced those voices. Instead, he focused on the possibilities: collaboration, authenticity, growth. When he arrived at the college, he sought out Emma, noticing her deep engagement with a particular text. "Are you ready for today?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "Absolutely," she replied, looking up with renewed fervor. "I've been thinking more about how we might frame our discussions around resilience, turning personal stories into a collective learning experience." Jack felt a spark ignite within him, her enthusiasm acting as a catalyst for his own burgeoning confidence. Maybe we can even integrate historical examples of resilience to underscore our messages. The more relatable we can make it, the better chance we have for engagement. What do you think? I love that. Stories have a way of transcending barriers. We can show them triumph embedded in struggle. They moved into a brainstorming session that flowed seamlessly. Jack's ideas about intertwining personal narratives with historical resilience sparked a creative fire in them both. As they mapped out potential frameworks, Jack began to envision how their pedagogical approach could evolve into something impactful, something that thrived on authenticity rather than conformity. Yet beneath the pulse of innovation lay an undercurrent of conflict. What if Dr. Levy or their colleagues rejected their ideas? Even prospectively defending their narratives would demand fortitude, pushing against the conventional and potentially inciting pushback. But each time that fear loomed, he remembered Emma's conviction. Led by example, she had said. Their vulnerability would not be their weakness, it could serve as a conduit for others to embrace their truths. The time came to prepare for their meeting with Dr. Levy. Jack paced slowly in the hallway, rehearsing what they might present. He could almost feel the tide of judgment building like a storm cloud. What if his narrative stumbled? What if it wasn't enough? Each thought flickered momentarily before he grounded himself. The objective wasn't perfection, it was transformation, his and theirs. As they stepped into the conference room, Jack caught a glimpse of Dr. Levy reviewing papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. The feeling of being an imposter threatened to swallow him whole, but then he recalled that intuitive push towards authenticity. "Good morning, Dr. Levy," Emma greeted, her voice infusing the room with warmth. Jack joined her, steadying his gait even as uncertainty fluttered in his stomach. "We're excited to share our thoughts on integrating personal narratives into our curriculum. If we can show our stories and examples of resilience, it can foster a space for our colleagues and students alike to engage in discussions that matter." Dr. Levy looked up, his eyes narrowing in skepticism. "Interesting premise, but how do you intend to navigate potential pushback? Personal stories can be a double-edged sword, after all." Jack inhaled deeply, preparing to respond. "By emphasizing vulnerability as strength, we create shared experiences that bridge divides, allowing for voices previously silenced to be heard." The discussion unfolded from there, the initial apprehension laying a foundation for a dialogue rich with dissent, exploration, and creative potential. Jack felt the tension in his chest slowly dissolve, replaced by a pulse of excitement. But as Dr. Levy posed questions, unearthed contradictions, and encouraged challenging discourse, Jack fought to keep his composure. Yet the storm of doubt still loomed. As they exited the meeting, Emma turned to him, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "How do you feel about that response?" Jack's lips pursed. "It's a step, but I can't help but feel we haven't fully addressed our own vulnerabilities in this conversation." The weight of their ambition stiffened his resolve yet urged him deeper into introspection. "Perhaps it's time to confront them directly with Dr. Levy," she suggested. "Share your own journey with overcoming self-doubt. It could inspire others." Her words struck a chord. The challenge not just to lead but to become the narrative was almost seductive. Jack realized that laying bare his own struggles might catalyze the very change he desired within the curriculum. As he contemplated this move, fear and determination danced intimately in his mind. Could he truly open up? "Next time, we tackle our vulnerabilities head-on," he affirmed quietly, igniting yet another facet of his professional development. Tomorrow would hold the weight of their journey. Today had been about stepping forward, but now it was time to dive deeper. Was he ready to reveal the personal stories that shaped him? In that moment, it dawned on Jack that his own narrative's power awaited acknowledgement and expression. That thought, both daunting and thrilling, set the stage for a more profound confrontation, one that would demand not just professional courage, but personal reckoning. Would Jack take that leap? The answer lingered tantalizingly on the edge. The night stretched long before Jack, echoing with possibilities and doubts. Wrapped in the cocoon of shadows, he pondered the weight of vulnerability. Emma's suggestion replayed in his mind like an insistently flickering light. Sharing his story could unlock a door not only for his development but for the many voices that had yet to resonate through their curriculum. He wondered if offering a glimpse into his own battle with self-doubt would be liberating or a recipe for disaster. They had established a foundation, a desire to embolden others, but could he be the catalyst? No longer just a facilitator, he would need to step into a space where courage meant embracing imperfections. Jack picked up his phone, scrolling absent-mindedly through contacts until he landed on Emma's name. Should he reach out for more reinforcement, or was this a journey he had to take alone? Deciding the moment was ripe for connection, he texted, "What if I share my own experiences with self-doubt during our next meeting?" Could be an important layer. The response came quickly, exuding warmth, "Absolutely. It'll show you're human. They'll connect more with your story." As he read her words, Jack felt a small flicker of warmth in the pit of his stomach. Yet it was firmly entwined with apprehension. Sharing deeply personal experiences was often seen as a weakness in academic circles. Would they see him as a leader or an incompetently exposed underbelly? Still unsettled, Jack made his way to the college the next day, each step a silent negotiation between his desire for authenticity and the primordial fear of exposure. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting hesitant light onto the path ahead, reflecting his internal struggle. He met Emma outside the conference room. "Ready?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. Ready as I'll ever be, he replied, though the quiver in his voice betrayed him. Inside the room, Dr. Levy was already seated, shuffling papers with an air of careful scrutiny. Jack felt the weight of expectation, a visual reminder of where he needed to go. As their meeting commenced, he allowed his breath to steady before addressing the elephant in the room, their own vulnerabilities. Dr. Levy, before we dive deeper into our proposal, I would like to change the narrative around these discussions, he began, surprising himself with the confidence that welled up as he spoke. I believe it's crucial to share personal journeys of overcoming self-doubt. I've struggled with this throughout my career, and I think it's vital that we show our students that it's okay to be vulnerable. As he shared the turning points from his own life, the imposter syndrome that shadowed his earliest days in academia, the fear of rejection that often muttered in the back of his mind, he watched Dr. Levy's expression shift from skepticism to contemplation. Emma chimed in, weaving her experiences into the dialogue. By making our own stories part of the curriculum, we can create a more holistic learning environment. It's about showing resilience in real terms. The room brimmed with a palpable tension, not of dread, but of possibility. The discussion shifted to addressing the potential impacts of personal narratives, both in the classroom and beyond. Jack felt the walls of doubt begin to crumble, each thoughtful question from Dr. Levy met with confidence rather than fear. Vulnerability as strength, indeed, Dr. Levy finally affirmed, leaning back thoughtfully. I see the merit in this. But you must be prepared. Sharing your truths will invite scrutiny. Not everyone will resonate with them. Jack nodded, no longer shaken by the potential pushback. That's a risk I'm willing to take. If we want our students to be authentic, we must pave the way ourselves. Back in the hallway after the meeting, Emma turned to Jack, her eyes alight with exhilaration. You were amazing. I could see Dr. Levy really considering this. Thanks to you, he admitted, the surge of adrenaline still coursing through him. Now it feels like we're building something real. But the glimmer of triumph was soon tempered by a lingering concern. Would they sustain this momentum? Conversations about personal experiences could lead to deeper societal reflections, something their colleagues might resist. Still, a fresh sense of clarity revolved around the essence of their approach, a commitment to authenticity that could act as the bridge toward genuine connection. Jack pondered covering more personal depths, the stories he wanted to share, and the revelations awaiting him as he continued to peel back the layers of his own narrative. Would confronting these hidden corners of his experience not only help his colleagues but also set him on an irreversible path of transformation? As exhilaration blended with anxiety, the next step felt inevitable yet daunting. There was no going back. Jack was ready, but questions bubbled beneath the surface. How deep would the revelations go? What shadows did he still need to confront? The answers loomed, tantalizing yet intimidating. The days following the meeting with Dr. Levy fluttered like pages in a windstorm. Jack sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of books, notes, and memories that both inspired and haunted him. With each glance at the open proposal document, he felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The prospect of addressing vulnerability openly in a professional arena was uncharted territory. Yet, this was precisely why he felt compelled to push forward. He needed to confront the self-doubt that had shadowed his journey, not just for himself but to pave the way for others. He found himself returning to the commitment they had discussed, the synthesis of their stories into the curriculum. If he was to embrace authenticity, he would have to delve deeper into the aspects of his past that felt raw and unpolished. There was a powerful narrative waiting to be excavated that involved more than just his academic struggles. It encompassed the familial expectations, the constant comparisons that had silently formed the bedrock of his insecurities. Jack reached for a fresh sheet of paper and began to sketch out potential themes for his narrative: acceptance, family expectations, and the crippling weight of perfectionism. Writing them down brought clarity and the realization that vulnerability was not merely an admission of weakness, it was a bridge that could connect people through shared experiences. His phone buzzed, tearing him momentarily from his thoughts. It was Emma, asking if he could meet to discuss strategies for presenting their story concept to the faculty. Jack agreed, feeling a surge of urgency. This was not merely an academic endeavor, it was a personal mission, a chance to reclaim parts of himself that had long been neglected. When Jack arrived at the coffee shop, Emma was already seated, a laptop open and busy with slides. Her smile was contagious, and for a moment, Jack felt a weight lift. Before he could voice his thoughts about the narrative he was working on, she spoke. "Jack, I can see how this is going to change things. Your story will resonate, they need to hear it." "I've been thinking about the context, though," he replied, fingers tracing a circle on the table. "What if they don't see the value in sharing our vulnerabilities? How do I frame my experiences without coming off as too emotional or unprofessional?" Emma leaned closer, her expression serious but encouraging. "You frame it as strength. Start with your acceptance of those flaws. Show them how acknowledging self-doubt has propelled your development. It's transformative, your evolution as an educator can genuinely inspire." The conversation flowed effortlessly, and Jack felt the energies intertwining, their individual experiences weaving together to form a tapestry of authenticity. They reviewed various angles, discussing how different aspects of their personal journeys could round out their presentation. Yet, beneath the thrill of strategizing, Jack's fears lurked. They needed to figure out how to deal with potential backlash, how to maintain their integrity without compromising the essence of their narratives. "Let's take this step by step," Emma suggested, her practicality a grounding force. "We focus on your journey first. Each share will be a stepping stone to deeper engagement, and we can navigate any pushback as it comes." The planning reassured him, yet doubt still lingered. Would the faculty view them with skepticism? In a world often resistant to emotional authenticity, would their honesty be misconstrued? The inquiry began to gnaw at him again. What if this was the wrong path? What if, instead of creating understanding, they had only sown division? As those questions swirled, Jack recognized that the discomfort was part of the growth. Each moment of hesitation propelled him to examine what he truly valued in his work: connection, authenticity, and the courage to transform. He was charging forward, though the destination felt nebulous, and there was no assured outcome. The next meeting was just around the corner, and the clock ticked down, each second echoing the gravity of their mission. Jack needed to crystallize his approach, solidify his narrative, and prepare for possible challenges not just from the faculty, but from within himself. But deeper yet, there was an even more significant question hanging over him: would he be ready to confront the full depth of his story? Did he possess the resolve to share those shadows without retreating? The impending responses awaited him, swirling just beyond his reach, a storm of potential growth, yet filled with unsettling uncertainty. Jack tightened his jaw, determination rising. It was time to face those shadows, but the revelations they would summon made his heart race in anticipation. What lay beneath that surface? Could it lead to profound transformation, or would it unravel him completely? The day of the presentation arrived, and Jack felt the familiar mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling in his gut. He entered the conference room, where bright fluorescent lights cast a stark glow on the polished table, reflecting off faces of colleagues who embodied a range of skepticism and curiosity. Today was not merely a presentation, it was a pivotal moment in his journey, a decisive step toward confronting both his personal demons and the deeply rooted barriers within academia. As he stood before his peers, Jack's fingers brushed against the edges of his notes, the pages filled with scribbled ideas that had stirred his passion to pursue this challenge. Beside him, Emma radiated calm confidence. Her presence alone ignited a spark of reassurance within him. This collaboration had transformed his approach dramatically. They had not only formulated a proposal, they had become the embodiment of resilience they studied. Their shared narratives became personal touchstones, keys to unlock their vulnerable spirits. "Thank you for being here today," Jack began, his voice a mix of excitement and sincerity. "We stand before you to propose a new approach to our curriculum, one that immerses personal narratives of resilience from both history and our own experiences." He glanced at Emma, who nodded encouragingly, her eyes wide with anticipation. They had mapped out the structure meticulously, how they would weave their own stories into the discussion and relate them to the larger themes of oppression and triumph echoed in the very narratives of Roman slaves they wished to bring to life. Jack took a deep breath, remembering the retreat of self-doubt that had haunted him in past meetings. I want to share a part of my journey, a struggle with accepting my own inadequacies and how that has influenced my growth as an educator. Each sentence felt deliberate, as if he were peeling back layers of armor. He spoke of the expectations he had carried, those burdens that often felt insurmountable. There was a time when I thought that admitting weaknesses would render me unfit to lead, he confessed, meeting the gaze of his colleagues. But what I've learned, and what I want to impart on our students, is that our vulnerabilities can become strengths. They can foster connections, empathy, and ultimately, empowerment. The room remained silent, a moment suspended in time as he allowed his words to sink in. Jack could see a spectrum of responses, some expressions softened, while others remained skeptical. But he felt empowered, knowing that vulnerability was now at the center of their engagement. Emma stepped in deftly, adding insights about her personal encounters with overcoming familial expectations. When I found myself confined by those dreams that weren't mine, exploring stories from the past challenged me to redefine my own narrative. It was liberating to see parallels between ancient resilience and my own journey toward authenticity. As their shared story unfolded, meaningful exchanges emerged, fostering dialogue about the power of understanding history through personal lenses. Jack noticed shifting expressions around the table, curiosity stirred as colleagues began to vocalize their own experiences, stories that echoed both triumphs and tribulations. What had started as a daunting prospect of criticism transformed into a dialogue steeped in compassion. Dr. Levy, who had initially sat with arms crossed, leaned forward, the tension in his body dissipating. You both make compelling points about authenticity in education. Engaging students through personal narratives provides a unique lens. However, how do you see us facilitating such discussions in a way that meets academic rigor? Jack felt a thrill surge through him. The prospect of addressing this constructive challenge instead of mere opposition was invigorating. By framing vulnerability as an avenue for academic exploration, we can craft an inclusive curriculum that respects various perspectives while anchoring discussions in history. The meeting progressed, an exchange of ideas spiraling into a collaborative vision for a reformed curriculum. Their proposal was evolving, reflecting not only their passions but the resonating needs of their students and colleagues alike. When it concluded, Jack felt a weight lift. He was not just a participant in this academic arena anymore, he had engaged in a critical dialogue that offered real potential for change. Each question prompted more ideas that spoke to the empowerment of the students. His personal achievement was clear. He had transformed from a hesitant educator into a confident advocate for a discourse that demanded exposure and connection. Later that day, as Jack walked with Emma down the campus path, the sun shining down with a warm embrace, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I was terrified, he admitted, shaking his head with a smile. But it was liberating to share. It felt like I was finally stepping into my own narrative. Emma smiled back, infectious warmth radiating from her. You showed that it's possible to face vulnerabilities without fear. You don't just lead, you inspire by embodying vulnerability. Jack's heart swelled with gratitude, both for her support and for the progress he had made. He had faced his fear of exposure and transformed it into a catalyst for fostering connection. He realized that framing history through the lens of human experience opened avenues for meaningful dialogue about resilience. In that moment, standing on the precipice of personal achievement, Jack felt solid confidence building within him. He was no longer just a history professor. It was clearer now that he was directly shaping the future of his students through the powerful narratives he chose to share. As they reached a crosswalk, Jack turned to Emma, excitement bubbling within him. Let us keep refining this. We can empower more voices and narratives. Yes, she replied, her enthusiasm matching his. The world is vast with stories waiting to be told. Jack smiled widely, knowing this was just the beginning. They had ignited a transformative journey within themselves, one that could continually ripple through the lives of students. He felt recognized not just for his competencies as an educator, but as a deeply engaged leader willing to harness the collective power of vulnerability. And as he stepped forward, he knew he had achieved something invaluable, empowering his own voice while embracing the stories that needed to be told. This was his moment of triumph. Now more than ever, the mission was crystal clear. The past held lessons that surged forward into the present. Jack was ready to face any doubts that might follow. This was only the beginning. Support your transformation journey. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, each click contributes. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. Share instantly this message with at least 5 friends who need to witness this life-changing conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Show your true support for personal overcoming stories.